Welcome. This is the first in a series of tutorials on using VM Workstation. This is one of the tools that we are implementing in the cybersecurity program to help you be more flexible in when and where you do your labs. The idea being that you should be able to do your labs where and when you want to. Traditionally, it's required that you have multiple computers and you actually did the install on the base hardware. That was what you were installing, was the only thing on that system. VM Workstation is what's known as a Type 2 hypervisor. Basically, it runs as an application on top of the host operating system. What that means is that you can install it on your home computer, depending on if you're running Linux or Windows. And go ahead and install different operating systems without destroying your ability to do your day-to-day work. Your wife won't get on you for blowing up all her recipes, so on and so forth. One of the real advantages is that you can do a lot of different operating systems. Besides Windows, you can install Linux, Novell, Solaris, Unix. And again, it doesn't keep you from using your day-to-day workstation. In fact, if you have enough RAM in the processors, enough cores on your system, you can actually run a small network. I've literally had 2 networks, each with a firewall and a server and workstations, and had 2 or 3 different networks talking to each other on my desktop. Takes a lot of power. It gets kind of confusing. That's actually better reserved for some of the Type 1 hypervisors, like our NetLab. We'll talk about those in a later tutorial. There's some other features. You can take what's known as snapshots. What that is you can take a picture of the condition of that operating system, and then you can install patches or other programs, and when you're done, then you can revert to that snapshot. It goes back to the original configuration. All the installations and changes you made go away. It's a wonderful tool for developing prototypes if you're going to roll them out in a production cloud environment or a Type 1 hypervisor. We'll talk about that in a later tutorial. It's available for Windows and Linux operating system. If you happen to have a Mac, there's also VMware Fusion for Macs. As a student in the cybersecurity program, you get an evaluation copy, or it is available to you. If you look on the cybersecurity program course in Blackboard, all the information is out there. You may have to request a account from me. That's no problem. It takes about 5 minutes to set up. This is it's actually VMware Academy on the hub. You'll notice that the VM Workstation 11, which is the current version, is there. VM Player, we're going to talk about that in a little bit, and the VM Fusion 7 if you're running Mac. If for some reason you don't have access to your VMware Academy account yet and want to go ahead and get started, you can go ahead and download and install VMware Player free. You just have to Google it. You may have to create an account with VMware. You set up a user email account and a password. No big thing. They're not bad about spamming you. One note: if you do install the player and then want to come back later to install Workstation, you will have to uninstall the player first. All your virtual machines will still be there, so that's not really an issue. You just have to be aware of that. One of the things that VMware requires is you need a 64-bit CPU. It also needs to have the virtualization extensions in both the processor and the chipset. Be sure that you turn those on in the BIOS. If you're not sure about whether or not your machine supports those extensions, I have the links to some tools that you can download and run to make sure your machine actually supports those. If you don't want it like the VMware and you want to do it at home, there's some other free Type 2 hypervisors. Microsoft has their Virtual PC. Oracle has a product called VirtualBox. We mentioned VMware's free VMware Player. Almost all of the Linux distributions have some kind of hypervisor solution. That we really don't have time to go into that today, but we can do that in a later presentation. To give you a little bit more information on the technical side of virtualization and VMware products, I'm going to give you a link to a couple other videos. One of them is about 15 minutes and the other one's 24 minutes long. Very good technical presentations about some of the technical sides of these that we don't really have time to go over in a tutorial. Before we get started, I want to mention two other tools that are available to help you do your labs when and where you want. Cisco's Packet Tracer and NetLab. Packet Tracer is a network emulator. It allows you to design, cable, and configure a number of Cisco networking devices and hosts. This is a screenshot of one of the skills integration labs. You'll notice that it has switches, routers, PCs. They're always expanding that. They have voice over IP phones. I've noticed the last release they actually added a cell tower and some other things. If you look in the upper left hand corner, there is a square box that is a server. It offers a number of network services, FTP, TFTP, syslog, DHCP, so you can emulate those network services. It's available for download on the Cisco Academy. Look for the student resource link on your homepage of your course. If you are really excited and want to get out there, while you're on the Cisco NetAcad, if you will go to Offerings, Self-Enrolled Courses, and go to the bottom, there is a self-enrolled class called Packet Tracer 101 that will get you started. We are going to do some videos at a later date, but that will get you started for now. The other big tool we have is NetLab, and NetLab is a platform that allows you as a student to check out, and basically you can do labs anywhere through a browser. You do not have to have a lot of resources on your personal computer. Basically, if you have any of the modern browsers and it supports Java, you're good. Basically how it works is you reserve a pod or a virtual lab of either virtual machines, or it can be physical Cisco routers and switches. I'm going to end up doing a series of tutorials on the NetLab. There's not as much out there on the internet for that, so look for it soon. I'm going to show you real quickly the two basic types of pods to show you what kind of power it has. The first one, the first slide here is showing you the system. You actually go in and reserve, create lab reservations. Again, like I said, this is for a group of computers and or Cisco equipment. You get it for a length of time up to 3 hours. The default is an hour, but you can go in and actually increase your lab reservation for up to 3 hours. I do suggest reserving it for the longer periods of time if you're going to be on. Most of the time that you can't use and you're spent waiting is for when you start a new lab, a new pod. This is the virtual machine pod. This particular one happens to be for IT Essentials. If you'll notice, there are 2 Windows 7 machines, 2 Vista machines, 2 XP machines, and a Windows 2008 server. You can click on and access any one of these devices, and that you can actually go in and configure them. They interact. They're on their own private little virtual network. The other kind of pod is for Cisco physical equipment. You'll notice there's a little bit more to this. If you'll notice, there's more there's more tabs for one thing, but you can literally click on any of these devices, whether it's the host, the PCs, the switches, or the routers, and access that, and you are actually interacting with physical equipment there on the campus. Okay, now let's get started, guys. We're going to install a Linux machine in a workstation. First thing, the reason I'm doing Linux the first time, it's free. Anybody can access it. You don't have to have any special access codes or anything like that. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to download an ISO image of the installation media, and then we're going to do something that's really important to do whenever you're downloading stuff off the internet. We're going to verify the hash. That does a couple things. That allows us to verify that we have not downloaded a corrupt ISO file and that it hasn't been modified maliciously. What you need to do is you need to go out, and it really doesn't matter. You will not be able to follow along if you download one of the other distributions. I'm downloading Ubuntu 14.04.2. That's a long-term support, so you can use that. It's supported for 5 years. Notice I'm doing the 64-bit. The other thing you want to do is you want to find this hash page. If you'll notice at the bottom, it's got an MD5 hash and the version, and I'll show you that here and how you use those here in a minute. Very important you do this. Honestly, they are kind of moving away from MD5 and SHA-1. There can be actually, there are some workarounds for that, so we're going to move away from that. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you I've downloaded the ISO file here, and I also have gone ahead and grabbed the hash files off of their web page. You notice I'm grabbing the MD5 that corresponds to the file that I've downloaded. I'm using a little tool called Hash Tab. It is free for personal use. If you're going to use it commercially, I think a single user license is $10. I went ahead and got one. I think it's worth it. You'll notice when I right-clicked and went into the context, the properties for that file, there's a new tab that says File Hashes. I'm going to go ahead and take that number that I copied. Well, I thought I copied it. Let me grab it again. And actually, I'm going to make a mistake. I'm going to get a blank at the end of that, and because I want to show you something, and then I'm going to go back to the properties in the tab. Now I'm going to go ahead and paste this in. Now, if this is good, if it's a good file, then I will get a green check mark. You notice I got a red check mark. Notice I added a blank in there. It looks at every position. Once I change that and remove that extra blank, you'll notice I'm only comparing MD5 and SHA-1. If you go into settings, these are all the other hashes that you could verify. I have them turned off because it just takes longer to go in and generate basically the way the hashtag codes work is they process the file through an algorithm and generate a hash code. If I change one letter in any of the files in this ISO to upper, if it's a lowercase I and I change it to an uppercase I, it will change that hash value. It's that sensitive. Okay, enough on that. We have a good copy of our ISO to do the installation. You should have VMware installed somewhere. I have it where it's pinned to the taskbar. It could be on the start bar. You can go to all programs. I usually tack mine to the task menu. One of the things that's confusing to a lot of people is that they don't think they have a license. The way that our licenses work, you get an extended, once you apply that key that comes along from the VM Academy, it will extend this to up to 365 days. Mine's a little bit longer. We're going to go in, we're going to create a new virtual machine, and I'm going to go with typical. Actually, I'm going to do a couple of things different. Notice if you're installing from a physical CD, pick installer disk, I am going to actually go in, and rather than having to burn that ISO file to a optical media, I'm just going to actually, you can use the ISOs. Notice it detected the version of the operating system. It's going to try to use easy install, so I'm going to turn that off and say I'm going to install it later. Now I'll have to be careful and make sure I go back and remap the CD later. But let's go ahead and go next. Now it's going to ask me what operating system. Notice on Windows, on the Microsoft products, these are all the products that you can install. Okay, and it customizes the setting for that operating system. In this case, we're going to do Linux, and notice again there's a lot of different things you can install. We're going to do Ubuntu 64-bit and go ahead and hit next. Normally I don't store my VMs in the user directory. If you're on a network, that will back them up, and these could be very big files. So what I usually do is I usually come down to the computer, and right off the drive, I will make a VMware folder. You need to create a folder for that particular VMware or virtual machine. It stores, and I'll show you later, it stores all the files involved in that virtual machine in one place so you don't accidentally delete them. And the other thing is if you want to package them up and move them, that makes it a lot easier. I'm going to go ahead and hit next. Notice the maximum size and disk size. I usually keep it to below 30 if I can. It depends on the operating system. Notice the choices that I can store the virtual disk as a single file. If I do this, I'm going to end up with a 20 gig file out here. Very difficult to back up, transport. What I usually do is a little bit slower on the machines, but it makes it easier to manage. I split them into multiple files. What this does is it will actually create a number of 2 gig files. That way you can put 2 of those 2 gig files on a DVD, which is 4.7 gig, or you can put them on an external hard drive formatted with FAT32. Remember, FAT32 Windows, the biggest file you can have is 2 gig. I'll go ahead and hit next. Now, on customizing the hardware, there's a lot of things you can do with that. You can change the amount of RAM. Since I usually have a lot of RAM, I usually bump that up to 2 gig. I can actually change the number of processors. I can turn on the virtualization engine, or I can do it this way. The one change I do suggest making is on this network adapter. It defaults to NAT, which is name address translation. Basically, it has a little home router, a virtual home router, and it puts the virtual machine on its own private little network and then routes between them. I usually flip it over to bridged and that allows your virtual machine to interact directly with all the other things on your local network. There's some advantages. Again, we're probably going to do a video on all the different networking options in VMware. So we're going to go ahead. I'm going to finish. Now, some terminology to make communication a little easier. The machine that you're running, the VMware, for our purposes, we're going to call this the host, and the virtual machine itself is going to be the guest. And we're going to have to refer back to that. You can also go back and edit the virtual machine settings here. Again, you can put descriptions. If you're like me, that a lot of times I come back to these after the fact and I can't remember what the username and password is. I'm going to use admin and pretty one for my password. Okay, that way now I've got the notes, so if I come back and I can't remember what my password is, I'm going to go ahead and power it on. And it actually, I made a mistake. I forgot to go back and change I'm going to power it off. I forgot to go back and change the virtual machine CD. It's trying to use a physical device. I don't have a CD installation media CD in the machine, so I'm going to go ahead and go back, and we're going to go to that ISO. This keeps you from having to burn a bunch of CDs unless you really think you need them. They change so fast. Now we're going to power it back on. Now these are the USB devices that are attached that I can move to my virtual machine if I want to. It's going through and firing up. This is the same process that you would have if you were doing this on a physical machine, bare metal. I'm going to go ahead and install it. I do have at least 6 gig. I'm connected to the internet. I could normally I would download updates while installing. I'm going to actually allow it to install third-party software, Flash. One of the things about Linux is the distributions are, depending on the distribution, they are more and more sensitive about whether there are proprietary software, whether it's open source. Some of them, like Debian, do not have any third-party sources unless you turn them on. Or actually, the Ubuntu is kind of middle of the road. You can do it, but you have to turn it on. I'm going to go ahead and erase the disk and install it. I'm just going to go with all the defaults on the settings for this one. There's some reasons you can do some of these other choices, but for right now, there's nothing. And we're going to go ahead and do install now. Continue. It's going to ask me for my time zone. That can be important for a number of reasons. We're going to go ahead and, like I said, we're going to accept the defaults on everything. And I'm going to go in here. Actually, I'm going to go with instructor and the same password, so I have to go back and change my description. I have to put it in twice. And continue. You can actually walk through and see some of the features while it's installing. I kind of like that. Okay, I'm back again. Recording. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. The installation is complete. Don't be surprised if it takes a lot longer than this video to copy, download, and install all the programs and dependencies. I've cut a huge section of this video out just to make it a little easier for you to do. I've actually been up and had coffee and played with my dogs. When the installation is complete, it'll say restart now. Click that. And the virtual machine will reboot. This takes a little bit. I'm doing this on a laptop, which is not the most powerful machine. It does have 8 gig of RAM and a dual core processor. If you do this on the workstations at home, I mean, in the classroom, you're using quad cores with 16 gigs of RAM. This will go a lot faster. Okay, it's coming back up. Again, it's going to show me the USB devices. I'm not going to attach with any of those. It's going ahead and restarting the operating system. One thing to notice about Linux is that it shows you very detailed information about what's happening in the background, which you can actually get by booting into some of the diagnostic modes of Windows also. That would be also really helpful in troubleshooting the process. I'm going to go ahead and log in. We're going to do one more thing today. We're going to go ahead and install the VMware tools. That actually gives you a better integration between the operating system and the host machine. And what you're going to do is you're going to go up to the tab, right click, install VMware tools. What it's actually going to do is it's actually going to load, there's an ISO file with those tools out there in the installation directory. Go ahead and say yes. Shh. I'm doing this Sunday afternoon at my house, and my dogs are real happy about something. VMware tools. I'm going to come up to the tab up above, right click it, install VMware tools. I'm going to disconnect and override the lock on the, okay, there we go. It's actually mounted that. I'm going to go ahead and copy this file from the CD. I'm going to go back. Normally what I do is I go to the computer file system, the temp file, and paste my VMware tool there. Open a terminal. To do anything really it's kind of like the UAC in Windows, you have to be root or sudo. So I'm going to sudo in as my instructor account, which has sudo permissions, and go to my temp directory. There is my VMware tools file. I have to extract that. I will put a Word doc with this file, so giving you these steps, kind of going through them fast. Now notice it's extracted the gzip file, and I have a folder. I'm going to go into that folder. Notice the install file is in green. That tells me it's executable. I'm going to accept the defaults on this. Basically, it's asking me where it wants to put things, whether I want to install different VM tools. Then it's going to do the configuration, and it actually, okay, here it goes. I want to be able to share files between my host and my guest. Remember we talked about that. Say yes. It's looking for my compiler. I don't want to change that. It's good. It's going to ask me about where the header files are. We're good on that. We're going to leave those alone. Don't want to do the kernels. We are going to do the ThinNet printing. Get authentication, yes. and it actually creates a new boot image that incorporates the drivers for the VMware. It just makes it work a little bit better. I'm actually going to reboot the system. You can either do that from the GUI shutdown, or you can do it. You'll notice that my screen's a lot bigger and I've got a better resolution because it has a better video driver. I can also now copy and paste files from my guest to my host machine and vice versa. Kind of a nice feature to have. Go ahead and log back in. Oh. Okay, I'm going to actually go in and I am going to go to the system settings, and I'm going to go to display. I'm going to increase that to match, and this will vary depending on your system. I'm going to go 1280 by 768 for laptop. And I'm going to go ahead and displays, do that the same, and I'm going to apply it. I'm going to keep this configuration. Notice I'm going to apply it. Notice my screen got bigger. One of the features you can do is you can use Control-Alt-Enter and make it full screen. And I'm done with this. Let's close this down. That pretty much finishes this presentation. In the next presentation, I'm going to go in on how you can customize and make your virtual machines a little bit easier to use. We're going to explore some concepts of snapshotting and creating linked and full clones. Makes it a little easier where you're not having to do your installs over and over again. You can have a base machine and customize it. And I think that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this, and we'll see you soon on the next one.